Security Dossier, securing the perimeter. The lockdown occasioned by the COVID-19 outbreak has continued to generate concerns, with increase in the number of confirmed cases globally. While others think this is the best option for containing the spread of the virus, many are still skeptical about the potency in Nigeria, where a majority of the citizens live on what they make daily. What are the security implications of the COVID-19 lockdown as hunger is beginning to bite harder? How have the security agencies fared in the enforcement of the lockdown so far? Again, it is a common place for fake and misleading messages to be circulated via WhatsApp, causing panic and heating up the polity. In the past years, it has to do with elections in Nigeria and opposition politics. We have seen the dangerous effects of fake news, pitching people against themselves and hurling insults across all divides. These and many more security issues will be discussed after this short break. Welcome to Security Dossier. I'm Lawrence Audu.
Nigerian army have given their all to ensure that our dear country is not overrun by Boko Haram insurgents. Some have in the process paid the ultimate price, while many will forever live with indelible scars occasioned by their determination to protect the country, no matter the hurdle. Despite these, they have remained resolute and undaunted, and today, all territories the insurgents once took control of have been recaptured and normalcy restored. And now, for the first time in a long time, the end of Boko Haram is foreseeable. Therefore, the wisest thing for the remaining insurgents to do is to surrender today or face total destruction from the army. Remember, the Nigerian army will stop at nothing to ensure that total peace is restored in all parts of the country. So, be wise and embrace peace today or get ready to be ruthlessly dealt with. This message is brought to you by the Coalition on Conflict Resolution and Human Rights in Nigeria.
Security Dossier, securing the President Muhammadu Buhari in a recent broadcast outlined measures for the ease of the lockdown to help the dwindling economy and improve the survival of citizens who need to work for what they eat daily. Part of these measures include an imposition of a dusk to dawn curfew on the major flashpoints. Are the security agencies ready to manage this without violating the rights of citizens? And what are the obligations of the citizens to the country in these trying times? With me to discuss this on the program today is a public affairs analyst, Sonny Ako. You're welcome to Security Dossier.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have been observing the lockdown, and so far, a lot of Nigerians have become very apprehensive about the activities of some security agencies, as the case may be. Recently, the National Human Rights Commission issued a release that said over 18 people have been killed by security agencies. Now, how, in your own postulation, have the security agencies in Nigeria fared enforcing the lockdown?
Well, thank you, Lawrence. First of all, I think it's best if we try to get this response by gauging the perception or the reaction of Nigerians, everyday Nigerians, to the conduct of security personnel since this whole lockdown matter started. From what we've seen in the public space, people making commentaries, and even from our friends and relatives, do we really think that security personnel have fared very well from everyday comments we get from people? And then bringing it home to what you just mentioned, the reference you made to the National Human Rights Commission reports, I think that was the time they put the number of persons who had been killed, enforcing the lockdown at 18. That was about the middle of April. We're just ending April now, and between when the lockdown in Abuja, Lagos, and Ogun was announced, I think, about 30th of March, up until the 16th of April, or about that period when the National Human Rights Commission gave us the figures of 18, which was at that time, painfully higher than the number of persons who had died from the coronavirus scourge in Nigeria. You would have seen that it wasn't even up to a month's bracket for those incidents to have happened. So for me, if you ask, I would say there's still a lot more that the security personnel need to do in enforcing the lockdown directives of Mr. President. The onus is mainly on those who are sent out to enforce these laws, and more often than not, you would have seen their superiors in the office. The Nigerian police has repeatedly made, sent out caution to their men. We see that in the news all the time. And very recently also, in the last broadcast the president made, he also specifically, devoted a few minutes or sentences to the issue of security enforcement of the lockdown. And you could see him, trying to plead with the security personnel to, behave better in their conduct with Nigerians during this period. So if you ask me, I would call the security personnel very low. But of course, that Nigerians also have their own issues. A lot of people want to, start to agitate and get very aggressive with security personnel on duty, even when the security personnel are not supposed to react. They tend to overreact because they are also Nigerians. They are also going through the issues. They are also afraid of getting infected with the pandemic, and so the whole mix of all of this is what we're seeing, happening.
Now, the lockdown itself, looking at a country like Nigeria, where majority of the people have to go out every day to find what to eat.
Yeah.
Now, this lockdown, as occasioned by COVID-19, has some security implications. What would you say are the security implications of the lockdown so far? What have we seen?
Well, we've seen some instances. Lagos is a good example of what happens when you try to lock Nigerians down and for relatively long period of time. You saw what happened with the 1 million boys and Awawa boys and the other security issues we saw in Lagos State. It was just a clear example of what should be expected if the situation persists around other states in the country. Most of these people that go out trying to rob or steal from people are people who usually go out on a daily basis to probably not to commit crimes. When all situations being okay, some of these boys go out to try to earn a living honorably and legally during the normal periods. But in a situation like this, you could see most of them joining their fellow gang members and trying to see how they could extort monies and other valuables from persons to just earn a living. That's just an example of what it's going on. Even in the FCT, we've been hearing cases where in most of the satellite towns and suburbs, there have been a lot of increase in crime. People tend to go in more earlier than is expected these days and try to lock up because people are hungry. That's just the truth. There are people who probably had the tendencies to commit crime before, but because they had something legal doing, they were more focused on that. But with this whole situation, the psychological issues and then the physical ones, coming into the mix, people tend to want to go to the way of crime to make a survival. So this will portend a lot of more tension in the security area of the country, and it calls for our security personnel also to respond by doing what they need to do at such a time as this.
And then in Lagos, for instance, in Kano and Abuja, we have seen very disturbing visuals of vehicles being looted. One was in Agege, a vehicle containing a minibus conveying bread, obviously intended for supplies. That was attacked and all the product looted. In Abuja here, not too far from us here, just at the Apple roundabout here, another vehicle carrying foodstuff, grains and all whatnot were also looted. And we saw in Kano somebody who went to buy goods for his small talk shop was also looted. What does this tell us?
Well, Well, quite unfortunately, I'll tell you that this is just a reflection of the realities of our times and our own country, right? In a country where I tend to like to relate Nigeria to the situation of an irresponsible parent, an irresponsible couple, permit me to use that word, husband and wife,
Yes.
who, you know, still go ahead to have more children than they can handle. So we're talking about a country of over 200 million people, you know. A comedian once said they got those figures when they met people at home to count. They didn't count the ones in the embassies trying to go away. There's another 100 on the queue, you know, in the embassies. So a country with such a large population, and then the leaders are not doing what they are supposed to do, this is what you get, you know, survival of the fittest. It's not only in Nigeria. I saw a video about a few days ago somewhere in Greece. I don't know if you saw that, where, you know, people were also supposed to queue up to get palliatives, and then it became a rush. You know, these are people we look up to in other climes, in sinner climes, you know, in quote. The sinner climes, people are already, you know, rushing. You saw what happened in the first weeks of the lockdown in the United States of America, where people were rushing, you know, storming the local shops, you know, to get toiletries and other things. So this is not just peculiar to Nigeria, but ours is worse because it's about food now. You know, human beings must eat to stay alive. Sure. So those very sad videos we saw, you know, it's just a portending of what is applicable in several areas. We are not seeing. Even here in Abuja, we've been hearing news. You know, a friend of mine who is with the Rotary Club in Abuja, they were going somewhere recently to, you know, take some palliatives to a community somewhere around Life Camp, and people were already jumping on their vehicles, and, you know, they had to, you know, make a U-turn and run out of there, but people stormed their vehicles and took out everything. There was another report somewhere in town just yesterday, you know, where something similar happened. So all of this is just showing you what could become. And if you ask me, I think it was all of this going on in the country. All of this could have, you know, contributed to Mr. President recently, you know, cutting short whatever plans he had to extend the lockdown.
That also will portend some more danger in terms of the spread of the virus.
Like someone said, we cannot remain in lockdown forever.
Sure.
And I heard the coordinator of the Presidential Task Force yesterday on TV, you know, saying there's no best time for lifting a lockdown. To that extent, I tend to agree with the man, because you cannot stay forever. But then, as soon as this lockdown, whether phased or immediately, as soon as there's a lift, the onus is now on us, the citizens, you know, to live up to our responsibilities. It is the drama we're expecting to see is how we live up to these expectations. When people will barge into the streets, you know, with all the hunger that has been pent up, and the hunger for, you know, going out to make money. We don't know what we might expect in the coming days, but it's left for us to see, and then we all play our own role to see how we can, you know, enlighten people about, you know, being safe this period.
Okay, now with the Ramadan already here, there's this tendency that some rogue scholars may want to gather their adherents, you know, to have, you know, the Quranic events, you know, iftar celebrations and what have you. And there's also another tendency that security agencies may want to weigh in, maybe to pick up some of these scholars who may want to gather their own followers. Don't you think we might just going to be facing a breakdown of law and order somehow? Well,
the best we can do, if you ask me, is to just hope that this doesn't happen. But I'm not in any way allaying your fears. I kind of bear those fears too, and to even support this fear we all carry now. You know, the governor of Kano State, you know, made it clear yesterday that he has same fears, you know, about religious and traditional practices, you know, leading to further spread of the situation on ground in Kano.
But you know, in a state like Kano, if there's a breakdown of law and order, it's going to be, the effects will be catastrophic. It will spread to the entire region.
Catastrophe might just be a way of putting it mildly, because we're talking about the most populous states in Nigeria now. Arguably, you know, but what the books say, you know, when you talk about population in Nigeria, you come to Kano before you go to talk about Lagos, you know. So if there's a breakdown of law and order in Kano, you know what that portends. It's going to be a mix of fear, hunger, and criminality. And when these three elements come together, it could be, worse than a chemical imbalance, right? So, what we would expect the security agencies to do at this time is to, the president has made, some directives for a task force. I don't know if it's a special one from the president now that was sent to Kano. That is for the COVID-19 situation. We would expect in this same period for several agencies, especially the security agencies, to do likewise by also upping their own ante in Kano State and doing what they are supposed to do. Move more men there before there's any. The governor has been, crying already. He's doing more crying than preferring solutions recently, if you ask me, unlike what we're seeing in Lagos State. The governor has been out and he's not hiding his fears, so we will expect the security agencies to do what they are supposed to do. If possible, shore up the amount of men in the state in preparation of what might come. To be honest, I feel for those who have to go into the fasting period, with all of this going on, right? But then they have to take precautions where they have to take precautions, because it's when you're alive that you can even fast and pray to God. Sure. Even in Mecca, there's been shut down everywhere, and we've seen pictures. So if they are taking these precautions up at the center of our religious beliefs, who are we here not to fall in line and do what we need to do?
Sure. Now, in all this, what is the role of the Nigerian military in an emergency situation like this?
Well, when you say the Nigerian military now, which of the military is a broad term?
Yes,
the armed forces. Well, I must say that so far, when it comes to this particular situation, coronavirus and COVID-19 we're dealing with at the moment, the armed forces have fared, squarely well. We've not seen them, overshooting their own boundaries, going to do what the civil police and other security agencies are supposed to do. We've seen more, even driving down here this morning, I saw more civil defense and civil police and some other security outfits that I cannot exactly place. There are some in some whitish uniforms, there's the VIU and other complements of paramilitary bodies out on the streets. But you would observe that you won't see the soldiers, Navy, Air Force, all of that. Don't forget too that they still have their hands full in the northeast, where Boko Haram is also trying to seize the opportunity of the moment to do what they like to do. And so for me, I think their role should be what their role is, protecting the borders and protecting national integrity at a time like this. There are still issues around the majority, after the shutting down of the airspace, majority of the international cases that have come into the country have been through our land borders. So the armed forces, are more or less, they are, required to, do what they are supposed to do, protecting our borders and protecting our national integrity. So maybe that's why we've not been seeing a lot of them, in the cities. But even at that, they are ordinarily not supposed to be in the cities doing this. We're already complaining that the police is already being overstretched with all of this. So if you ask me, I think the security, the military authorities, have so far comported themselves well, and I'm hoping that they will be on standby too, if need be, in the area of security breakdown in places like Kano. Of course, we saw them, coming in to provide support to the police in Lagos recently. Even
the Air Force, recently the Nigerian Air Force converted the C-130 Hercules aircraft into an air ambulance. And they've been doing quite a lot other than that too. We've seen them, going out to do some community outreaches and also supporting with the building of ventilators and coming up with some support to the country. So if you ask me, I think they've done very well in that aspect, the Air Force especially. Now, we'll be talking with Mr. Sonny Ako, a public affairs analyst, and the topic has been the security implication of the COVID-19 lockdown. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, the program will continue. Please stay tuned.
Of this leadership is a factor in this regard to the success of the fight against the Boko Haram terrorists. And then you look at also the factor of morale.
Security Dossier. Welcome back to Television Nigerian. You're still watching Security Dossier. We have we have some of your comments rolling in, and I'm going to take them. There's quite a number, but because of time, I'll just take a few of the comments. I have this one from Dan in Abuja. He said, definitely. The question we asked him was, we put a question through asking given the relaxation of the lockdown and the imposition of curfew, what would the security agencies be expected to do? And he said definitely most Nigerians work beyond 8 p.m. as sole proprietors. Also, there will be definitely rush hours after the lifting of the lockdown due to reopening of businesses and ministries, leading to traffic jams, both vehicular and human movement. And it is going to be very challenging for the security operatives, especially those units known to have overzealous and happy trigger tendencies. That's from Dan in Abuja. The second comment I have here is from Ibrahim Dan Fulani, who wrote in from Maiduguri. He said, social distance in Nigeria can only take effect by 20%. The challenges we are facing is that of our religious leaders, in which they did not believe in the said disease, the COVID-19. And security cannot be contained, cannot contain the situation without lockdown. That's Ibrahim Dan Fulani from Maiduguri. And I have this one from Mrs. Ihagode, who wrote in from Lagos. She said, because people that are asked not to open their businesses, yes, will not be able to wait for hunger, due to hunger and lack of money, and much more. And then she says she operates a beauty spa with 9 staff, and she had to send all these ones back home, and it's been really, really telling. Now, Mr. Akko, you have heard some comments from some of our listeners who wrote in, and I mean some of our viewers. What reactions do you have to some of the comments?
Well, it's just further reflections of the times that we found ourselves in, and talking about security situation and the human movement that will be expected after the gradual phasing out of 4th of May and beyond that we've been talking about. The commenter who talked about the relativity of reactions of military personnel and security agencies to people who will be rushing to and fro their places of work during that period. You know, I tend to agree with that person, because already, even when we have had very scanty number of commuters, you know, plying the roads, we've had issues already. We've had run-ins, we've had reported cases. National Human Rights Commission, you know, in the first 2 weeks after the lockdown, you know, reported over 100 cases, right, and complaints. So in the coming days, where there will still be these checkpoints and security personnel on the streets, you know, considering that it's not going to be a one-off lifting but a phased one, we're going to expect, you know, more tension between, you know, the civil population and the security agencies. So it won't be it won't be a bad time for the security agencies to, you know, call their men to order, do further sensitization, and let them also be in tune with what is expected of the times we are going into. Remember, I've talked about the psychological status of most of these personnel going out also. They are also going to be, very wary of getting infected themselves. This is Nigeria. We also know that our own population also needs to be cautioned. So these are the other kind of announcements we have been expecting to come on the back of the president's announcement. The department in charge of transportation in the FCT, we expect to hear announcements from them. I heard the speech from Lagos by the governor yesterday, and I thought it was more detailed than what the presidential task force, talked about. First of all, everybody was a little bit taken aback by the presidential task force yesterday being the ones to further break down the phasing out of the lockdown. But we also expect other departments like transportation. Are we going to have, 100 standing and 51 seated in the buses as usual? Are we going to have 5 passengers or 4, as the case may be, in the taxis? What are the rules and regulations? Are we going to have traffic congestion and people, jam-packed, for hours on ending? There should be systems. The traffic authorities and other sub-agencies are supposed to come up with their own announcements, to further be in line with the presidential directive, and so we can be able to ameliorate some of these issues that we're expecting.
Now, moving forward, an authoritarian crackdown on dissents have erupted on Twitter after Nigerian lawmakers proposed legislation that would hit the internet users in the country with steep fines or jail term for spreading what authorities decide is fake news. Under what is known as the social media bill, which the Nigerian Senate advanced weeks ago, police could arrest people whose posts are thought to threaten national security, sway elections, or diminish public confidence in the government, according to the draft text. Everyone else seemed to be fed up with the issues of fake news in the country and seeking a way forward, except those benefiting from fake news. And then, what are the inherent dangers of fake news? Should we employ the use of draconian laws to punish those involved, or should there be an outright censorship of the social media? My guest is still in the studio, Mr. Sonny Ako, who has been talking on the security implication of the lockdown. Now, Sonny, I want to ask you again. Now, what do you think is the effect of fake news on national stability?
Well, the effects are endless, if you ask me. The effects are endless. I'm particularly, personally taken aback by the number of this sort of news that we see nowadays. Ordinarily, Nigerians are not the best when it comes to investigating at various levels of Nigerians, even down to sometimes we see these gaps in how crime is fought in the country. There's basically one of the factors is lack of intelligence gathering and all of that, and it also comes down to the general population. People are not wound to go and take the extra care of verifying news before they share them. We've seen several of such instances, in this lockdown situation where people, try to create more anxiety or deliberately cash in on the tension in the land to, further spread fake news. Some of these actions or activities are carried out deliberately, some not deliberately. Some persons do some of these things, for personal gains, probably to, chase clout or to further gain followership on their social media platforms. We've seen a lot of this, but when it comes to the effect on national stability, I'll tell you that they are enormous. Most glaring and most threatening for me is the danger of how it affects the response of the civil population to governmental announcements. When people, have been bombarded with too many fake news, people don't even know how to react to the genuine ones when they see them. And so it affects civic responsibility, especially among young people. Even when the government comes and they are giving you news now that's supposed to be for your own good, people just write it off.
No, because we have seen that. We have seen that, especially on the ongoing war on insurgency in the northeast.
Yeah.
Most of us have been on ground many times, and we see what these guys go through. Then when we write the stories, you get to hear negative comments, you get to read negative,
It's because that same, because of, the same negativity quotient that has been, put into the mind of the person, reacting to that news. If, for example, you've been hearing news that monies meant for the war have been carted away, and then you hear stupendous amounts that are not even real, being peddled, that people are sharing. Somebody sent me something and said the members of the presidential task force on COVID-19 get 500, is it 500,000 a day, or 500, is it millions now? I don't know. Nigerians just bandy words around. You see those kind of news and people see it and they be like, hey, I can't even get food to eat in my house, and these people are just sharing the money. And then you come the next morning, government is now telling you about the successes they've made, with the COVID-19. The person will just say, what are these people telling me? You're eating all the money and you're telling me about something. So it's now left for us to see how to curtail what we can do about people who put this kind of fake news out there.
No, but you have a number of them. Well, we may not want to mention names, but if you look at some people, one among them, Deji Adeyanju, is one guy, FFK, and then Aisha Yusufu, then you have Kemi Olunloyo. These are guys that from time to time you hear them say things that obviously these are fake information and intended to mislead people. What is their intent? What is the aim? What do they intend to really achieve? Because sometimes you see arrant trash, but the gullible followers will just take them like that.
So like I said, for me, I wouldn't want to go into specifics and name calling. But, most of these persons you've mentioned are mainly politicians. We've been coming, from an election in 2015 and up to this moment, Unfortunately, some persons have not, fully, withdrawn themselves from the mood of those elections. And those of them who are politicians, some of these names you've called, are people who acted very actively in the previous administration and who still have a score to settle with this administration. So for those kind of persons, it might be political. So like I said, there are several reasons why people peddle fake news. Some people do it, for political reasons. Some do it to gain, financial incentives. Maybe they are being paid by somebody to do such. Some people do it just to gain followership, especially on the social media space. So when they do people put out this fake news, they also take into cognizance the fact that out of the humongous population of Nigerians, over 200 million of us, the people who could be said, to be enlightened enough to discern what is real from what is fake, not even up to 30 million of that.
So what should the authorities do?
So there's a large army always waiting for anybody who wants to cash in on them. If I start a fake news this morning, I can bet you if I craft something and put on WhatsApp before this weekend, it will get to you and it will even come back to me. Somebody will send it back to me. So when it comes to what the authorities have to do about this, they've been trying their best to, it's almost like a dilemma, of course, you have the Freedom of Information Bill, which has been out there and which a lot of these persons happen, to do what they do, everybody has the right, to, go out and, make their own comments about what they perceive about the government doing. And the government on their own part cannot go from home to home, arresting persons to say, why did you say this? Why did you not say this? So I think for what they can do in situations like this is when there's a clear violation of or infringement of of either the government or an individual's rights by, actions or, writings or announcements or news that is put out there that is fake, probably the government needs to, or whoever that individual needs to, go the side of the law to, make an arrest. There's nothing wrong if you have all your facts that somebody has maligned your personality or said something that is wrong against the state, that if it's against the state and it's pretending or leading towards what could cause disaffection among the people, of course the security agencies know what to do in those kind of situations. But I would agree with you that we've recently had a flood release of this fake news all over the country, and very unfortunately the people who even put out these things, some of them are people you expect to know better, and they don't even apologize for them when they discover it's fake news. People just put things there out there. So something has to be done about this. I would agree with you to that extent.
We've been talking with public affairs analyst Mr. Sonny Ako, who has been sharing his views on the security implication of the COVID-19 lockdown. and also some views were shared on the effects of fake news on national stability. This is where we draw the curtain on Security Dossier for today. Until we come your way again with another exciting edition, stay tuned. My name is Lawrence Aldo. Please follow us on all our social media handles